Okay, first of all, I would just like to thank all of you for being here today. I really appreciate your help, and I am excited to talk to you about this book because I think you might be surprised at some of the applications that are in the book that will work for you in your classroom, hopefully. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is what you think about the word coach. Like, what comes to your mind when you hear the word coach?
Sports.
Okay, good. Sports. What else? Anything. It could be a personality trait. It could be a part of their job.
Well, actually,
Leader.
What came to mind
Good. Leader.
was Lamaze training. Because you have a coach in your Lamaze training class. So that's what came to mind.
Athletic.
I'm not sure how to spell that, so I'm not going to put it. Okay, Lamaze.
Loud.
Okay, loud.
Encouraging.
Good. Encouraging.
Clearly, I'm not on the right track.
You are off way up there. We need to redirect.
I'm
Your
off
thinking.
somewhere.
Okay.
Sorry.
Good words. Anything else that you think of? Just what comes to your mind when you hear the word coach? Anything else?
Bottom line.
Okay.
Because it's win or lose.
Okay. Bottom line. You're so creative, Allison. I like that. Win or lose. Okay. Am I supposed? No. Okay. Sorry. What else? Anything else? Okay, why do these words come to mind, do you think? Why are these, because these are some of the things I thought about. Sports, they're athletic, they're encouraging. Why do we automatically think of those words?
Because when I watch basketball games, college or professional, I see them standing on the sidelines, screaming their voices out.
Okay, good. So they're always screaming, they're yelling, they're energetic, they're kind of, you know, doing several things at one time. They're having to watch several things at one time. Yeah, what about someone who's athletic? Why would we automatically pair those together? Because we normally think of a coach as doing what?
Being an athlete.
Being an athlete, being a former athlete.
Yeah.
Maybe only coaching athletics. So that kind of leads me into what we're going to talk about today, which is a book that was written about the teaching philosophy of a very famous coach named John Wooden. You all know who that is? Heard his name before?
Yes.
Allison, what do you know about him?
College basketball, I don't remember who was it Duke?
No, it was actually, he coached for several years at UCLA, was the main, where he won all his championships. Mm-hmm. So, the book, You Haven't Taught Until They've Learned, is based on his teaching principles and practices. And so, all the things that he used as a coach, he learned in the classroom, because of course he used to be an English teacher. Surprise?
Yes.
Okay. And this guy, Spin Nader, he is actually one of the guys that played under Wooden, like he coached him, and so he kind of has a lot of first-hand experience, so he co-authored the book. But hopefully what you'll see is that really all of us in the classroom are, in our own way, coaches. And I think once you see a lot of his strategies, a lot of them translate, you know, perfectly to what we do in the classroom. So, a couple things in overview, just so you kind of know who he is and what we're going to talk about. He was an English teacher, so I thought as English teachers we could appreciate that, right? Because it's not easy being an English teacher. The instructional methods that he used in the classroom later transformed into methods he successfully used as the head basketball coach at UCLA. So, he started just being a teacher and a coach at a local high school and moved up to different universities, Indiana University, and then became the head coach at UCLA. And of course won several championships, I think like 9 or 10 in a row, which is pretty good. That was like in the Bill Walton era. Okay. Don't know who that is?
Yes.
He's a very famous basketball player.
Uh-huh.
But older. And then Wooden always describes himself as a teacher, and his instructional practices can easily be applied in the classroom. So anytime someone would ask him, he would always refer to himself as a teacher. So teacher and coach to him were no different, which I know in our situation we often see them as what?
Separate.
Yeah, two completely separate things, right? Like he's a teacher and a coach, but we don't normally think of it as, you know, we can use those terms synonymously. So he was a big believer in that being the same thing. Okay? And here's one of the quotes I really like from his book. When you're through learning, you are through. So that's one of the first things we're going to talk about. So I'd just like to know your thoughts. What does that mean for us as teachers? When you're through learning, you're through.
Well, you have to be constantly learning along with your kids.
Okay, so teachers have to learn alongside students. Why is that so important?
You have to be educated on what you're teaching.
Okay, you have to be educated about what you're teaching. Absolutely. What else?
And if you think you know it all, you're gonna look like an idiot.
Okay, good. So if you think that you know it all, you look like an idiot, and kids will quickly figure out that you don't, right? So that was one of his big methods also that he was very serious about, was making sure that he knew all he could about basketball in this case, and before that, about English. So here are the key ideas we're going to talk about very briefly. Planning and purpose, a pursuit of continuous knowledge, and organization for instruction. So again, to condense this whole book into a professional development was kind of difficult because there were so many great ideas in the book, but I tried to just pull 3 things that hopefully would apply directly to what you would use in your classroom, especially since it's kind of the end of the year and we tend to start thinking towards next year, and this might, provide some help with that. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is the importance of planning. Each lesson must have a clear sense of purpose. What do you think that means? We've talked a lot about that this year, purpose and
The reason for what
objective.
you're teaching,
Good,
why
the
you're
reason
teaching.
behind and why you're teaching what you're teaching, right? And we've talked a lot about that in different staff developments this year. And just a little tidbit, Wooden used to assess each practice, every single practice, down to the minute. He would carry around 3x5 note cards everywhere he went. Like everywhere he would go, he'd just have these note cards. He'd be writing on them. Because this, of course, was a long time ago. But, and he would write down notes, like anything that the players did wrong in practice, something they didn't understand, anything that occurred during that practice that was not 100% in his already developed plan, he would write it down on these cards. So what do you think that provided for him? Like, why do you think he would do that? I mean, that's very tedious. Why do you think he would do that?
Guess you're looking for patterns.
Okay, maybe looking for patterns. Any other ideas?
To see what areas needed to be focused on.
Okay.
To see which ones needed more attention and maybe which ones didn't need as
good.
much.
Yeah, which areas need attention, which areas the students or players in this case were already strong in. And so years later when Sven Nader, who was playing for him at the time, he grew up and graduated and he became a teacher and a coach. And he was conducting his first practice and he realized that he was just kind of winging it. Like he just showed up and he was like, okay, we're going to run some drills and we'll see how you do with this, and it was very chaotic. And so it caused him to start thinking about the importance of day-to-day planning. Coach Wooden, what he would do is he would go through each hour of practice, or actually each 30-minute block of practice, and he would say, okay, from 3 to 3:30 we're going to do free throws. From 3:30 to 4 we're going to do scrimmaging. From this time to this time we're going to do conditioning drills. And he would plan out everything to the minute. So the difference between those two, just like in the classroom, would be what? What would a teacher be like who was just winging it? How would you explain their instructional method?
Not relaying information clearly.
Okay, information doesn't get relayed clearly.
Flinging things on the wall, hoping some of them stick.
Okay, good. What else? What could be some other methods? Worksheets maybe, busy work, just, oh, here's a worksheet, just finish it, or sit there and do your work and be quiet. Versus a teacher who has planned, maybe not to the exact minute, but increments of time to each activity. What's the difference as far as student learning or creating an environment where students can learn best? The difference between these two.
Because you're going to be doing something at all times, not just going to be sitting there.
Okay. Good, so there's no downtime, right? There's not any time usually for misbehavior or people being off task.
And kids at this age need consistency.
Okay, good. So that shows them consistency. And it also makes them feel more comfortable because they can learn easier because they know what to expect. When these players got to practice, they knew exactly they were going to give me a minute of downtime the minute they got out on the on the court to practice. Okay. So anyway, a couple of quotes. They're pretty much the same, but failure to plan is planning to fail, and failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So I think that definitely applies, to us in the classroom, because if we don't plan, we really aren't thinking through what our students really need. So that's something important for us to keep in mind. So as summer break is coming, some application for you. Your plan for the year. Wooden would start always with yearly objectives. Like in practice today, everyone's going to learn how to do this, 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 and this. And he would list those out on one of his cards, right? And then once he did that, then he would start to develop a weekly lesson plan, and he calls them lesson plans in the book. His practice plans are his lesson plans. And he would lay those out and kind of make sure that each plan matched up with his objective. So if he wanted the group to get better at full court defense, he would have clearly aligned lesson plans to teach them that objective. Does that make sense? And I know that seems pretty logical, but sometimes I know when I'm planning, I sometimes forget about my objectives. It's like, okay, well I gotta teach this, this, and this. And sometimes we really forget what the actual skill is, like writing an essay, or writing a good sentence, or reading something in depth, or reading something critically. So when you're planning, make sure that you're starting with those objectives, that you're looking to see what you want your students to really know before you start with just jotting down plans for the day, okay? And this is a quote from him too: I would spend almost as much time planning practice as conducting it. How about that? What if we spent 45 minutes planning for each 45-minute class, or for every day? You know, do any of you do that? I mean, that's a long time. How much would you spend planning, like for a week?
Spend like 6 hours.
Okay, a lot of time, right?
A day.
So to really plan something out and to have it run smoothly, it takes a lot of time. So I know that he definitely believed in dedicating enough time to it. The prerequisite of passion is deep subject matter knowledge. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Wooten would study endlessly before teaching a lesson, meaning he would try to learn everything he possibly could about a defense, an offense, a specific skill, free throw shooting, whatever, before he would teach it. So he is a big proponent of lifelong learning, continuous improvement, always, you know, learning as much as you can to help students. 2 ways he would do this: data analysis would be one, which I linked to what we do with common assessments, which what's the point of a common assessment?
Oh, you're asking a
Just-
question
yeah.
about your competence?
Yeah.